Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Salapis on behalf of the Baylor Medicine Medical Group. I want to say good evening and welcome, and thank you for joining us in this wellness webinar. And we will talk about long-term habits for staying healthy while we're kind of living in this world of work from home and quarantining and social distancing. We have a panel of specialists along with us, and we just have, a little bit of blurbs with what our expertise may lay. And then we'll open up to questions from those who are in attendance, and we're more than happy to answer any of those questions. So myself, I'm Dr. Irvin Salapis. I'm a primary care sports medicine physician. We have Emily Monfoletto. She's a senior registered dietitian with the Baylor Comprehensive Care Clinic. Dr. Peter Gian. He is a family physician with a practice as well as a weight loss specialist as well. And we have Dr. Juliet Holder-Haynes, who is a bariatric surgeon in our Department of Surgery. Next slide. Okay. So I'm up first. The big question as a sports medicine doctor, people always ask me, what can I do in terms of exercise during quarantine? Is it important to exercise during this time that we're living in? And the answer is wholeheartedly yes. For those who regularly go to the gym, and with some gyms closing, some are concerned about going to the gym just because of increased risk. This, staying at home, working from home, being under some sort of quarantine, it's rough for regular gym goers. Gyms are, they provide an environment for motivation, social interaction, get your fitness. So sometimes during these times, it's a little tough, but regular exercise is vital to, maintain your health. You can also improve anxiety, stress, depression, and in this time of quarantine living, sometimes the anxiety and stress can go up. So, according to the American College of Sports Medicine, as well as the American Heart Association, it's recommended to exercise about 150 minutes a week. That can be split from 30 minutes, 5 days a week, or you can do a full hour of an exercise 3 days a week. What does moderate physical activity mean? Basically, what I tell my patients is that if you and I are having a conversation while we're exercising, that's minimal. If you can only get 2 to 3 words in without huffing and puffing, that's what I call high physical activity. So moderate would be more of that you're able to complete a sentence, but you're still taking a breath in to exercise. Another thing that we tell them is you can talk, but you can't sing. And that's where the moderate physical activity may be. It's also recommended to do strength training about twice a week. So both cardio, aerobic exercise, as well as resistance training, strength training, or anaerobic exercise. So the benefits of exercise, even in the times that we're living in, is very important. Next slide, please. All right, so tips to stay active in the time of COVID-19. Get outside. It's I've been telling my patients the last couple of days, it's like we're moving to a world before internet. What are people doing in the summer? They're going outside, they're going for walks. People are picking up bike riding. I've seen an uptick on people picking up their rollerblades, roller skates, just to even just get out of the house. So, walking outside, even just around a block, you can bike, run, do some gardening, yard work, and socially distant sports such as tennis and even golf is a good idea. So getting some natural sunlight, and it actually gets you out of the house to stay active. Another thing is, if one is working at home all day, I usually recommend to try to sneak some movement in your routine. Maybe do some household chores at a more of a brisk pace. Get a little bit of exercise in if you're during commercial breaks, about a minute or two. Or if you're making a phone call or a business call, you can walk around while you're doing the calls to get some steps in. There's also fitness apps as well. There's both free and paid fitness apps. If you are a regular gym goer, sometimes your gym or your CrossFit gym may have some virtual workout sessions that you can do, kind of like in this Zoom interaction. There's also online videos like that are free on YouTube with yoga or some strengthening exercises. 7-minute workouts, a free app. There's a couple of free yoga apps as well. So there's a lot of fitness apps available that you can just get from your smartphone or iPad device to get some exercise. I mentioned about strength training twice a week. You can obtain some free weights, nothing heavy, but there are some dumbbells, some resistance bands, and those are available at any sporting goods store. If they seem to be out, because a lot of people are actually buying free weights and resistance bands, you can just pick up, something that carries a little weight, like a gallon of water, or something that's a little bit heavier, at least like 3 to 5 pounds, and then exercise with that. And then as your fitness level increases, obviously you can increase the weight. Body weight exercises are good too. Air squats, push-ups, planks, burpees, jumping jacks, anything that can give your resistance to build some strength. And also for those who have younger children, or even under 18 children who have video games that have an active play video games. There's the Nintendo Switch, and there's a lot of controllers that can do a lot of active movements. There's like dance games with certain video games that have the camera to work out. So it's fun and interactive for the family as well, and gets the entire family involved when you're staying home to exercise. So that's my little spiel on trying to stay active. Our next speaker is Emily. I think she'll have the next slides.
Yeah, thank you. So being a dietitian, I was going to focus on food. And first I wanted to start with the survey, which was actually completed recently, to see if people's food habits really have changed during the quarantine or during this pandemic. So things to note, there are some positives, but there's also maybe some not so positives. One being cooking more at home, which I think is huge. Most of us really don't have the time, if we're working, to come home and prepare a full meal. So I think that's one of the positives that we've seen from this. But with that, being home, we're around food more often. So snacking more obviously has become, more of a problem. Getting more takeout, which is, probably to help with supporting the local businesses and so forth. And even getting back to some processed foods that maybe we haven't even consumed for years, have definitely started to fly off the shelves. So I wanted to kind of focus on a couple of these, primarily snacking more and the takeout and tips to kind of help with that. So next slide. So snacking more, what do we do? What is happening? Why are we snacking? A lot of times it's out of boredom, or we're tired. We've been sitting in front of the computer screen all day long and we're looking to do something else. So here's kind of more of a behavior. Is there something we can do to kind of get ourselves away from the kitchen? Maybe we're working too closely if we're working on the couch in our living room, or we're even working in the kitchen. Could we go somewhere else, or kind of get our mind off of it? Take a break, go outside, get some fresh air or take a walk just to kind of get our mind off of snacking. And then usually we feel a lot better if we're able to take a little bit of a break. Is someone else eating in the house? Like with children around, they're constantly snacking or eating. And once you see somebody else start eating, it just drives us to want to snack as well. So thinking about here, maybe taking a second, thinking, am I really hungry? You can use something like a hunger scale. If you just simply Google hunger scale, it's a 1 to 10 scale. Basically trying to figure out where you fall on there. Are you having sort of feelings of hunger? Is it feeling more mental? If I said, here's an apple, does that sound satisfying? If it doesn't, it's probably that you're not truly hungry. It's just because, again, maybe somebody else is snacking or eating in front of us. We talked about being around food more often. We're in our house, food's a lot more accessible. Maybe, if we were at work, we'd have to get up and go downstairs or get on the elevator to go get something to eat. So can we sort of, again, try to close down the kitchen similar to how we do at restaurants? Maybe have open kitchen hours such as lunchtime and dinner time, and then in between, we kind of create cues for ourselves that the kitchen's closed. Turn off the lights. If our kitchen has a door to it, shut the door. Again, maybe move our office out of the sort of viewpoint of the kitchen, just to make sure that, again, we're not having those other cues or things that are driving us to eat outside of hunger. And then lastly, are you hydrated? One of the biggest issues that most people have is we snack thinking we're hungry, but we're actually thirsty. So making sure that we're keeping water on hand or low calorie beverages, just to make sure that we're staying hydrated. One thing too is thinking back and saying, how long has it been since I've had something to drink? If it's been a while, go there first. Get a sip of water, keep your water by your computer, by your desk at home. If it's within arm's reach, we're more likely to drink it subconsciously without even realizing how much that we're actually consuming it. The other thing to look at is our previous meal. Was our meal balanced? If we weren't eating a very balanced meal, lacking in good sources of protein and fiber, then it may be something where we are going to be hungry, quite often right afterwards. So thinking back, did I have a good source of protein in my meal? Did I have a good source of fiber? Those are things that are going to help sort of slow down digestion and provide more satiety afterwards. Obviously, for skipping meals, that could definitely be a trigger, from wanting to snack or eat potentially larger portions at the next meal as well. And then, sometimes it's okay to have a snack. It's not that all snacks are bad, but what are we actually choosing? We want to focus more on whole foods. So again, things that are going to provide us, a source of nutrition, kind of basing it similar to a meal, again, thinking about that protein and fiber source, what can we get from our snacks that's going to provide us more nutrition versus a lot of times, snack foods tend to be more of the highly processed foods that have a lot of sugar and sodium and things in it that we are typically trying to limit. So I wanted to show just a couple of snack ideas here on the next slide, just basics, but again, focusing on getting either a good source of protein or fiber in there, even with the nuts or seeds. Heart healthy fats are a good way to kind of provide more satiety. I put some of my favorites up here just to kind of change some things up. A lot of times we don't think of getting, more vegetables in during our snack time, but there's great products out on the market for those quick, easy options. Or even, some snacks like the ones down at the bottom are broad beans. But they're a good replacement for potato chips. You still get your crunch, different flavors, but again, you're getting more protein and fiber by consuming a bean instead of a fried potato. And then next, the biggest thing would be, with dining out, is we're not in control anymore. So obviously, there's a lot of great restaurants and we're looking to support them. And I'm not discouraging us from doing that, but we want to make sure that, it's not impacting, our health overall. So big thing to consider is portion size. You can assume that at a restaurant, it's easily going to feed about 2 to 3 people. So first thing to do is basically cut the meal in half. It's either splitting it with the person you're with or simply packing up half, go ahead and put it in the refrigerator, out of sight, out of mind, and then focus on the food that we have in front of us. Restaurant meals are also very high in carbohydrates and starches. That's just natural. Vegetables are more expensive, starches are not, so you can make more money that way. But goal is, again, trying to at least split that starch or carbohydrate portion in half, asking the restaurant if they'll sub, additional vegetables or side salad, or really the best that we can do is just try to keep that starch portion to smaller than our fist whenever we're dining out at a restaurant or ordering in. And then lastly, fats. Fats taste good, that we're not denying that, but, restaurants typically use a lot more fat in sauces and things than what we would use at home. So being mindful of that, definitely getting those on the side when that's available, or even asking the restaurant how they prepare their foods. Typically if you get your piece of fish or chicken and it's glistening and shining, most likely, they've added butter or another source of fat before they prepared it. So, ways that we can kind of limit as much of those extra sources of fat as possible will help with the total calories that we're consuming. And then lastly, the increase in processed food consumption. Things like Chef Boyardee are flying off the shelves when traditionally companies were struggling to, keep these brands alive. A lot of it's probably stress, which I'm sure we'll talk about, and, using food as comfort. But really, trying to think of what are ways that we can make, good foods, and again, whole foods, is easily accessible as some of these processed foods. So meal planning, I think, is one of the best things that we can do here. There's a couple apps that down at the bottom, Big Oven and Pepper Plate, are meal planning apps that are available that kind of put everything in one place for you if you like that. But basically trying to do some form of meal planning, whether it's just simply writing down, some ideas for meals, even, taking your calendar and kind of laying out what the plans are for the week. Maybe you are ordering out on Friday, that's fine. And let's prepare, something for the other days of the week. Again, using the apps, or even taking it to the next step and preparing some of the food actually ahead of time, whether that's bringing everything home, washing all your produce, having it ready to prepare, even chopping things, like onions and peppers and so forth, you can easily chop in advance and have those ready in the refrigerator. So when you're ready to make dinner, it's just not going to take as long as it traditionally would. So I hope that was helpful, and I'm going to hand it over, I think, to Dr. Holder-Haynes now.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about lifestyle tips for starting activity at home. And I know it's really, really hard to get motivated to exercise. So I'm going to just talk about some strategies that I have personally found to be helpful. One of the major barriers that people cite when they think about embarking on exercise is that they just never liked exercise, So it's hard to start exercising when you've never liked it, or when you think about it as torture, or you see it as something that you don't have enough time to do. So one of the things that I suggest is that you see it as an investment in your health and in your well-being. And you should also see it as an opportunity to take a break from your life, from a stressful job. It's just a good time to focus on yourself. So we're going to talk about strategies to help you start and stay consistent with an exercise program that have been studied and found to be effective. And another factor that patients mention, or another barrier to exercise that patients mention, is that they just don't have enough time. And my answer to that is that we all have 20 minutes at least that we can spend on exercise. So I'm going to start with some clarifying questions. I think when you're thinking about any new activity or project, it's good to ask certain clarifying questions just to help you map a strategy. So one of the first things I like patients to ask themselves, or people to ask themselves, is, what do you really want? Why is exercise important to you? What is your goal? Is it to lose weight? Is it to run a 5K? To get off of medication? Everyone has different goals. What are your strengths and your weaknesses? It's really important to have a realistic assessment of what your abilities are. Do you wake up easily in the morning? Are you one of those people who could be a morning jogger? Do you work out better at night? Do you keep the promises that you make to yourself or to other people? Do you have a lot of enthusiasm? Or do you get discouraged easily? Do you have a lot of physical ailments that might prevent you from pursuing a particular type of exercise. So I think it's really important to do a realistic assessment of what your abilities are. Another important question is, what are you willing to give up? Embarking on an exercise program is going to cost something, whether it's time with your family, time watching TV, maybe actual dollars in terms of buying a pair of shoes. So it's important for you to look at, what are you willing to give up? What is it potentially going to cost you? And then I find that once you have questions like the what and the why answered, then the how will follow. You'll figure out a way to get it done. So it's important to clarify what your goals are. So these are some of my tips. I recommend that you start with an easy activity, right? Too often we set really lofty goals and we're ill-prepared to do that activity and we get discouraged. So I recommend that you start with something really easy like walking, chair exercise, even skipping, jumping rope. You can buy a rope for $10. Think about body weight exercise. I think the big thing is to make it affordable and make it something that you can do anywhere. Next, it's important to start slowly, right? Our brains are wired to keep us well-fed, warm, comfortable, and conserving energy. So anything that is a major disruptor to any of those activities, it's going to be really, really hard to first start. The inertia is going to be huge, and to continue that is going to be really, really hard. So start with something that's really easy so that you don't sabotage yourself. Next, it's important to be consistent, and that's really hard to do, right? Sometimes it can be helpful to connect an activity that you want to do to something that you're already doing. So for example, if you want to adopt a morning exercise routine, maybe decide that I'm going to do 10 push-ups after I brush my teeth every day. And that way the push-ups become connected to something that you're already in a habit of doing. I find another important tip is to use friends and family for accountability. If they know that you're embarking on a goal, they'll maybe ask you questions, just to make sure that you're staying on track. If you're active on social media, maybe if you post every time that you perform an activity, that accountability will help to keep you motivated. So figure out what works for you. Is it journaling? Is it telling friends and family? But having accountability is one way to help to keep you motivated. This is another really important point next. I think it's important to have some way to record your progress, right? That could be through a journal, or you can use fitness apps or fitness trackers that you wear on your wrist. I think it's important to be able to look back in time and see your progress. I was doing that actually last night. I'm trying to get better at riding a bike, and I'm really slow and really weak. But last night I looked at my progress for the last 3 months, and I realized that I'm getting stronger, and that's reinforcing. So figure out a way to record your progress. I have patients who say, well, every time I exercise, it hurts, right? And I think it's really important to distinguish discomfort from pain, all right? Whenever you're exercising, you should feel a little out of breath. You shouldn't have chest pain, okay? But you should feel a little bit of discomfort, right? But pain is something that's disabling. And if you feel actual pain, then you probably need to rethink the activity that you're doing. But it is normal to feel discomfort while you're exercising. And it's normal to feel discomfort a couple of days after after exercise, if you've pushed yourself hard enough. That discomfort 2 days later is normal, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't exercise. It just means that you put your body through some stress and your body is adjusting, all right? This next point, I don't have it on the slides, but I found it really important for myself to make your exercise activity part of your identity. So if you decide that walking is going to be your activity of choice, it's important to remind yourself, I'm a walker, or I am a runner, or I am whatever the activity is. If you make it part of your identity, you're more likely to pay attention and to perform activities that help to reinforce that persona. And then finally, this was mentioned before, but you might notice that once you start getting more fit, you might be tempted to sneak in snacks, right? And I think it's important to keep snacks out of reach so that you don't sabotage the hard work that you've done. So that's all I have. So next we're on to Dr. Gian, who's going to talk about stress management.
Hi, everybody, and I'm Dr. Peter Gian. I really echo with everything everybody else has said, and hopefully one of the first points I really want to bring is that a challenging time is also a time for opportunities. I think we have all been faced with tremendous amount of stress and a lot of changes in our routines and just the changes from all fronts. But rather than focusing on things that we cannot control, think about this as potential opportunities to improve our health, improve our lives. So for instance, a lot of my patients have learned to cook healthier recipes. And we used to spend a lot more time on the road commuting, but because we are staying at home more often and spending more time with your family most of the time, I have started to challenge a lot of my patients to tell me about their cooking recipes in the last several months. And I've heard a lot of great progress. So cooking can be a great way to improve your overall health, as well as being a great social activity for you and your family together. Another thing we can do during all this time is to get involved in some new hobbies that will keep you active. So any of those physical activities that Dr. Soulapis and Holder Haynes has mentioned, think about which one will fit you better and perhaps pick and choose one and start to do more of it. And of course, utilize this time to work on some more specific health goals. And by that, I mean goals beyond blood pressures and your sugar levels. Maybe you look at our slides and this talk and realize that, hey, perhaps I should decrease my unhealthy snacking more. Or perhaps I should incorporate more activities in my daily routine, so on and so forth. But hopefully there are some things that you can take away to be very specific and very concrete, so you can either write it down or plot it in your mind and use all those extra times at home to work on some of the things. So those would be a few suggestions I have overall in kind of as a big picture advice to focus on opportunities and things we can actually change and work on, as opposed to things that are forced upon us and we have no control over. So next slide. So since we have already talked about diet and exercise, I also want to bring another important aspect of our overall health, which is stress levels and stress management. And the first thing to start for many of us, and we are all somewhere along this spectrum, but some of us are better and more skillful than others. But one place to always start is to be aware and to monitor your own stress levels. So for instance, for some of us, whenever we are stressed out, we start to sweat more. You notice that you might start fidgeting. Your muscles might tense up It might affect the way you talk, the way your productivities are. And those signs may be different from person to person, but it's important to start noticing what you experience and start to be more mindful and recognize those body's response. I have patients who start telling me, oh yeah, now I start to notice that my muscles really tense up all over my body. And once you start to work on recognition and be more what we call mindful of stress levels, then it becomes a lot easier to maintain and intervene yourself. So what are some of the common techniques that we often suggest to our patients? Well, in COVID, it's really important to create and maintain good structures for your day. Our routines have changed, our structures are different, but we need to build something so that we feel that structure. Healthy habits are a very, very powerful uh, form for our health, because once we have that autopiloting going on, it becomes a lot more of a struggle. So maybe set a time. Okay, in the morning, I'm going to work this many of hours. My lunch time and my meal time is only during this time. My snack hours are only during this time. I block 1 hour or 20 minutes for my physical activities at this time of the day. By building more structures and actually implementing structures, you build habit. And with habit, everything becomes easier. The other thing is to notice that social support has been really strongly affected during this time. So I would encourage everyone to be cognizant of that and to be extra proactive about strengthening your social support. So whether it is a quick Zoom meeting or FaceTime or a phone call or even some emails, make a little bit time, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes a week, to stay in touch with people that are important to you. And it might not have an immediate effect on your stress level, but when you are overall maintaining this, we tend to see that we tend to be a lot more resilient in our day-to-day life and to be better copers in terms of dealing with stress levels. Of course, we talk about a lot of different techniques for distressing. So some of the common ones that we hear about are physical activities, which literally changes a lot of our hormonal levels and neurological signal levels, and literally physically decreases your stress. Meditation is very, very helpful, and nowadays there are a lot of free sources online on both meditation or something we call mindful meditation. And mindful meditation is when we talk about trying to experience your environment with various senses, your touch, the sound and sight and smell. And it typically involves something like a breathing pattern, as well as being aware of your each part of your body, of your mind. So those are often comes in as guided things that you can do for 10, 15 minutes. And those makes excellent breaks for just small parts of your day. Talking to others, whether it's friends or family, is another great way to de-stress. Our body tend to feel better when even we just talk things out. And so utilize your social support. When things are not going well, you're not feeling well, talk to others. And you can, a lot of times, feel better at the end of that. And of course, looking at situation from a different perspective. In medicine, we call this cognitive behavioral. I don't want to put a therapy on it, but we call it the cognitive behavioral approach. By changing the perspective as well as your behaviors, we often have powerful influence on how much better we can feel as far as our emotions. And of course, if you feel overwhelmed, seek professional help. Your primary care physicians are here for you. We have plenty of, we have psychologists and social workers in our system, as well as your other revenue, sometimes online even with your health insurance. So utilize all that and utilize that to your benefit. Next slide. The last thing I want to touch upon is sleep. That's something that I hear way too often, and doc, I just don't have enough time to sleep. Well, what I see a lot of times is that, think about this, just like your physical activity and your eating as an investment for both your physical and mental health. This is kind of like, think about it as refueling your mind and your body at the end of the day. We know that from medical studies that residents who are sleep deprived for a number of hours are almost equivalent as being intoxicated. So that says strongly about how much less our brain works when we are sleep deprived. And we also know from a lot of study that your stress hormones goes up and that can have a lot of detrimental effect on your body. So think about that as really a true investment long-term for your body. When you think about your sleep, think about how many hours you're getting, but also the quality. So are you getting interrupted sleep? Is there a small infant in your house that makes you wake up every 2 hours? Sometimes unavoidable, but think about it as part of the sleep equation that when you have a fragmented sleep, that will definitely affect your overall how restored you feel. And another thing is monitor your sleep hygiene. So for instance, are you going to sleep right after you see some pretty emotional shows, or are you working really late and then immediately go to work, go to sleep? Do you go to sleep at a different time every single day? All of those can affect how your body gets restored. So think all of that and address any sleep-related conditions. So for instance, if you know you might have or you already have sleep apnea, it's important to make sure you wear your sleep machine. And if you don't tolerate the sleep machine, talk to your doctors about what other options there are. And that way you will feel a lot more restful and more productive the next day. So those are what I have, and hopefully there are a few tips that are relevant to everybody.
We did receive a question if y'all have a couple more moments to stay on the line, and if anyone else has a question, feel free to drop it in the Q&A box. And Dr. Holder-Haynes, I saw that you responded here, but the question is what types of exercises would you suggest for amputees and wheelchair patients?
I can answer that one. So for, I call it adaptive sports, but for amputees and wheelchair, it's a lot of upper body exercises. You can do, keeping the arms out, maybe with some weights to hold it for a couple seconds, or maybe 20 to 30 seconds. You can do it up in the front, do some raises, or do some shoulder presses with some weights. The other thing that you can do is in terms of, you can do some dips with the chair, just a little bit, just to raise you up to work on the triceps. For the lower body, there's also some abdominal twists you can do in the wheelchair, but there's another thing called the captain's chair, where you can pick up with your arms, try to pick up your legs to see if you can raise the knee and hold it for 20 to 30 seconds, and that can help kind of activate the lower abdomen core for exercise. So those are usually what I recommend for my wheelchair patients for exercise.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Salapis. And we received another question. What is a good way to maintain boundaries between work and home when you're working from home?
I can have a couple of thoughts, and one is what we call quiet hours, meaning at a certain time of the day, you set what we call quiet hours, basically no email, no work email, no work phone calls, and those times are set strictly for you and your family. And that doesn't have to be a long period of time, but if it is there, a lot of times what we see is you tend to feel that, hey, I am getting a couple of hours just for me. And so that's one way I would suggest.
Awesome. Well, if we didn't get to your question, I've taken a note of it, and we will have someone from our panel, follow up with an answer to your question, and want to make sure that all those get answered. But just want to thank everyone for taking some time out of your evening to join us for this webinar. We hope you guys found it helpful, and a thank you to all of our panelists. And if this is something that you'd like to attend another one for, follow us on social media, and we'll continue to be promoting any future webinars there. So thanks so much, everyone.